Hello, everybody. Doesn't look like there's very many people here, at 30 something. If you guys can hear me, go ahead and put a yes in the questions box, not the chat box. And if you guys have any questions before we get started, hey, Kelly, you can just put them in the question box. I'll wait a few minutes for people to get here before we get started. Kelly, any luck on that selling that house yet or no? Not yet. Okay, cool. So I see some new people. Anybody, is this your first time? And if you've been coming for a while, today's topic is going to be about buying property, so buying structures with either a house or apartment building, stuff like that. Welcome, Andre, Serena. So basically, we do this every Wednesday at 5 o'clock Pacific time. And then there's like 10 different subjects, but we just kind of cycle over and over and over. So you guys can always ask whatever questions you have while I'm talking. And if you raise your hand, I can't see it. Like I can see it's highlighted, but I don't know whose hand it is. So if you guys have questions along the way, just put it in the chat box, or not the chat, I'm sorry, not the chat box, the question box. And then I can see it and I can answer questions. So anybody who doesn't want to hear about buying structures only, we're not talking about vacant land today, then I would just come back next week. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, perfect. Awesome. Oren, that looks like a new name. Where are all the new people from? Maryland, Hawaii, cool. Hawaii, Georgia, Dallas, Patricia, I've seen you before. Hawaii, you seem nice. All right, so it's 5 after, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So you guys see the screen, does it look like one screen or two screens? Right, Oren? Oren says, I wish I was in Hawaii. Yeah, me too. This heat here is just stupid. One screen, okay, perfect. All right, so welcome to my Wednesday meeting. Like I said, today we're going to be talking about houses, or structures, or buildings, however you want to call it. I have been coaching for the last, I think, 10 years almost, maybe a little bit more. I've been with tax sales support for about 4 years, going on 5 years. Yes, it will be recorded on the website and posted on the website. So let's get started. So like I always tell you guys, on the front page of tax sales support, there is going to be a little, 3 little lines in the upper right corner that you can click on, and at any time see where they're having the 3-day events, right? So right now they have Orlando, which is happening in a couple days, and then here in Sacramento, 3-day virtual on the 16th to the 18th at the same time, and then Austin and Seattle. And you guys do get a $200 discount. So it is only $299 for you to attend if you guys are interested in going to any of those 3-day schedules. And just make sure you reach out to whoever your admin person is or who your coach is, and they can give you the information for that. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about 3 different topics when it comes to buying houses or structures. We're going to talk about the condition of it, the market value, and the potential risks. So I will pause on the rehab slides because I know a lot of people Really like the numbers that are on there because you can kind of get the worst case and the best case scenario. But obviously, depending on where you live in the country, what's going on in the country is going to depend on what those costs are going to be, right? And if any of you are veterans like myself, I always volunteer to buy my own supplies if possible because we can get 10% off, at Lowe's or Home Depot. So make sure you guys are taking advantage of that if they let you buy the supplies, which most of them, I've never been told I can't, but sometimes they do have a bigger discount than I do. So sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. All right, so talking about the condition of the property, you want to avoid homes that have huge costs, right? So the cost of repairing foundation is crazy, and there are different types of foundations. There's just like the slab, there's pier, and something, I can't think of the name of it, but that's in like Texas and Arkansas. There's just different foundation types that are out there. And of course you can get them fixed, right? It's not that big of a deal, but depending on how bad it is, sometimes the cost of it isn't going to be worth it. So are we able to see the foundation? Not 100%, but I mean, if you look at the house and see that it's uneven, or you can see cracks in the brick, going up, or even looking at the windows, you can tell sometimes they're off a little bit. Or just anybody who's going to give you an inspection could let you know if there is a foundation issue just looking at the front of the property. And then roof repairs, a lot of those you can just see with pictures by driving by the property. You can also try to look on Google Maps at the aerial photo. You will be able to see the roof. And then depending on where you're at in the country, it'll let you do the 3D, where you can kind of move the camera around from 2D to 3D to see the roof, to see if there's any contrast, any holes. Tarps are a big indicator, especially if you go back in time on the photo and you see that at one point it was blue and now it's white. That means it's been there forever, right? So that's an indication that the roof has a hole in it and they never repaired it. They just put a tarp over it. There's literally somebody a couple blocks over from me that I've been trying to buy this house forever, and that tarp is completely white because it's been there for so long. Water damage, same thing. You're usually able to see that stuff even from the outside of the property. And of course, if there are any inside photos, like if you're buying something from a land bank, or they're at the Michigan sale, or a couple other New York sales, just depending on who is running the sale, sometimes they do get interior photos, and you can always tell water damage. And sometimes it's easy to repair and sometimes it's not, right? So you guys just have to really be paying attention when you are buying structures to some of these high cost things that we have to repair. So the red on this screen is basically the highest it could be, right? Like worst case scenario is what you can put up at the top, and then lowest potential price can be on the bottom. Carl is asking, can we detect water damage externally? I mean, kind of. If you look at a tarp, is going to be a huge indicator, right? But on the outside, sometimes you can just see the paint, or you can see the dry rot in the wood. Just depends on how close you get to it. But water damage, for the most part, I would say would be internal. But if you are looking at the roof and just looking at the property and going back in time on Google Maps, if you have that availability. And what I mean by that is not every time can you go back in time on Google Maps. Just depends on if Google drove by there or not. And as cool as they are, they haven't driven, every single area in the country. But I would just, honestly, what you could do is you could just max out everything that you think would need to be done as far as rehab goes, and then set your max bid off of that, right? So another way you guys can look at these pictures too for the rehab costs is you can just take a picture of it, because this slide, the whole PowerPoint isn't posted on the website, but the recording is. So if you do want to go back to the recording, you can take a look at it and take a picture. But these are just some prices that they've gotten for kitchen and bathroom. And then another thing you guys can do too is if you are looking at different property, or you have a realtor in that specific area, you can always ask what the average repair cost is per square foot. And some people do it that way, right? So if it's 1,500 square feet and they say it's, you know, $150 or $250 per square foot of living space, you know, sometimes you can do it that way, but this is just kind of a way to get you guys started if you have no clue on what things cost. So here is plumbing and painting. So this is like, I don't think of plumbing, but I think of like putting lipstick on a pig for the paint. So if it is something that you just buy and you know you just want to clean it up, paint's relatively inexpensive. It just depends on who you have do it. And of course, at any time, I always recommend, if you're available, doing the demo yourself, because demolition is what costs a lot of money too, because it's a lot of labor. But as everything, you guys do what you want to do. What we tell you is just recommendations of what we would do or what we have done. All right. And then here is some for doors, windows, and electrical. Just some costs on here, which I'm not even sure how old these costs are, but you can also get estimates too. So make sure you guys are taking advantage of those free estimates that the contractor will give you when they come out. And then here's HVAC and roofing. And the roofing is definitely going to be different depending on where you're at in the country, because like here in Sacramento, it's just ridiculous. And I've had roofs put on in Indiana and Ohio for less than I've had a bathroom done. Like it's just insane, the different prices around the country. And then some other stuff to think about. So we did talk about HVAC, but definitely look at those places that you know that are, you know, names that you know of, unless you know someone in that particular town. You can go like a mom and pop shop. They might be a little bit cheaper. Water heaters, some of the ones you can get now are waterless or tankless, right? That you can get. Electrical, and you can obviously go as far as you want to go, right? Are you going to have to rewire a whole house every single time you buy it? Absolutely not. The older the house you buy, obviously you are going to run into some of those plumbing and electrical issues. So maybe not look at stuff that's over 100 years old, right? So I've bought 3 houses that are, I think one of them was 1880 is the oldest house I ever bought. And it was a nightmare. Like it turned out beautiful, but it definitely cost way more than I was ready to do. But that was also way in the beginning when I first started buying these properties. But I mean, I'm also into the ugly. I like the stuff nobody else wants. It's always been my jam. All right, so anytime you're looking at a property in person, you just want to make sure you're looking at the whole exterior if you can, right? If you can't personally go there, then you want to hire someone to get a photo. I've brought this up a million times, but I'll bring it up for the new people. bpophotoflow.com. So it's B as in Boyd, P as in Papa, O as in Oscar. bpophotoflow.com is a website you guys can use. It's very inexpensive. But they will even knock on the door. Like they'll leave a note. They'll do all kinds of stuff. So definitely check that website out to get photos. Or you can use Uber. You guys can hire people from Facebook Marketplace. You can hire people from Craigslist, which I know everyone has like a bad taste in their mouth about Craigslist, but it is still pretty handy for people who are just looking for, you know, a side gig to make a little bit of money. And those of you who live in areas, I mean, that are even close to a bigger area, like I know someone said they're from Houston, places like that. If you guys are looking for a little bit of extra money, that BPO website is always hiring people as well to take photos. And then Carl recommended bark.com. So I'm assuming that's another website that you can get photos. Eric, it's bpophotoflow.com. Let me see if I type this in here, if I can send it to everybody. Here we go. bpophotoflow.com. Okay, that should have been sent to everybody. Can everybody see that? I don't think I've ever responded like that before. So make sure it works. Okay, cool. All right, so now I know I can send it to everybody. Next time somebody asks. All right, awesome. Yeah, so always get a photo, and then Make sure they're taking a couple different photos, right? You want to get the left side, you want to get the right side, you want to get the back, because if you get this photo on the left, right, and you're like, oh, that house is really cute. I don't know about that whole mailbox situation, though. It's kind of crazy, but you're like, okay, the house next door doesn't look that great. This house looks amazing, right? And then you look at the right photo and you see that, oh, wait a minute, it's all boarded up except for in the front. So then I would be like, okay, well, what is actually going on with this property? I want to go back in time. I want to see what it looks like. You know, obviously the gutters were ripped off. You know, that's all gone. Has it been boarded up several times? Has it been boarded up and not boarded up? How old are the boards? Because the older the boards are, the longer that place has been secure versus if it's brand new wood on like certain doors, the front door or the back door, or certain windows, then you know people have been breaking in there. And anytime people have been in and out of a property, trust me, they are stealing the copper piping, they are ripping the electric out, they're doing all kinds of stuff. So make sure that whoever you send to take the photos, or if you're getting the photos yourself, that you are taking pictures of each side of the property so that you're not blindsided by something that you weren't ready for. So obviously, if you live close enough to the property, then you want to go yourself. I would never fly out just to take a picture of a property, but I do drive every property myself if I am attending the sale. And there's several websites you guys can use for that. I mean, I know you can do Google Maps, but I don't think it puts you in order. And I use speedyroute.com. So that website, you can put in your hotel or you can put in your airport and go straight from the airport, drive all the properties in order, and then it'll put you back wherever you want to end it. So the cool thing about that is you're not aimlessly driving around, especially a city that you don't know, but it'll put all the properties in order from destination where you start to the one that you end with, which is really cool. And of course, you're always going to be the best judge of what you're looking at, because we can tell people what we want till we're blue in the face, but sometimes they just don't understand what we're saying. And Carl is saying, oh, CD route, no. Let me respond here. Speedy route. There we go. Speedyroute.com. All right. Always use your friends and family if you can, because they're the cheapest, right? Like, hey, friend, can you do me a favor? I've even had students offer, like if I've talked about going to a sale, I've had students take pictures of properties for me because they're going on vacation in that particular area. So just, you know, try to do everything as free as possible until you can't. But definitely if you're going in person yourself, I would do it, or just pay for someone else to do it. When it comes to handyman, some people get really freaked out, and I think it's a rightful thing to be freaked out about because I've had money taken as well. There's a bazillion, you know, terrible contractor stories, but there are some good ones too. So you've got Angie's List, you've got people on there. I think it's Thumbtack is another one. And if you're really, really worried, you can always go to the county. The county is always going to have a list of contractors that are licensed through the county with the state that you can trust to go through. Because depending on where you live, again, will depend on how often the inspectors from the county are driving around. And of course, if you're doing work on a property and they see it and you don't have a permit, you know, it's going to be a nightmare from there. So I've gotten most of mine from Craigslist again. I like to go on there to see if anyone's working on a project or if they're looking for work, or if I'm in a city driving properties or just wherever that I'm investing in, and I see someone working on a property, landscaping truck, they're doing windows, they're doing HVAC, whatever, I always get their information so that way I know you can actually see them working and you know they're going to respond, right? There's so many times that you've talked to contractors and you just get nowhere, right? So make sure you guys are getting at least 3 different estimates from people before you just go with the right one. And this will be a subject that I will say not to use friends and family, because I can't tell you how many friendships I've ended over the years for, you know, not getting the job done or taking 25 grand and not finishing something that was supposed to be done, you know, a year ago, stuff like that. So I know I'm not the only person that's happened to, but when it comes to stuff like this, unless they are in business and you know to trust them, because they've worked on other people's houses, not just doing side odds and ends. Definitely get someone who's licensed, and if you can get reviews or look at old photos that they've done, that's always going to be a good indicator for you on who to hire, or just driving around and finding someone who's in that particular area. Realtors are someone else that you can have take pictures for you. Some realtors are amazing, some aren't. But I like to contact the person who has the most reviews, and I like to contact the person who has the least reviews. So sometimes the older person is easier to work with because they have more experience. And then sometimes the younger agents, which they could still be older, right? They're not all super young even when they get their license, but they're just more hungry for the business, right? So they're legally not supposed to charge you anything, but I have given out, gift cards and stuff like that. But any realtor that even offers for you to take photos, I would let them do it, or and ask them if you could get either a BPO, which is a broker price opinion, which is a cheap, basically what we think the house is worth versus buying an appraisal. But anytime that you can get someone like that, get their number and try to send them as much business as possible. Plus, they also are really good for pocket listings. So if they have investors that they know of that are looking, for certain properties in certain areas, they're definitely going to help you out. And also letting you know which areas not to buy in, which again, they're not supposed to say, don't buy here, don't buy there, but you guys can read between the lines on when people say, it's like calling a property management company and you give them the ad. So they don't say, we're not taking on new clients, yet you call them and then they ask for the address. Once you get the address, then they say, oh, well, we're not taking on any more clients in that area. That's a good indicator that that area is high crime and to stay away, right? That's happened to me more than once. So always read between the lines when you're talking to these people and just be as honest as possible with them without teaching them, because you guys paid good money to learn how to do this stuff on your own. You don't need to teach realtors or other people how to do this business, but definitely I would later, like if you guys do a lot of work together or they're very helpful, they give you a lot of information, but that's not something you guys have to do. And then of course you can hire a professional photographer, which to me that's overkill unless it's when you're going to sell the property and it's already done. But they can also take direction, which BPO photo flow I think kind of just replaces this, that they can take pictures and it's not that big of a deal. And then the classifieds, like I said, Craigslist, you can use Uber, like I said, or you can do Facebook Marketplace. There's always somebody looking for money on the side. So, all right. So market value. So how do I find comps? So you can use your property value websites, or you can go through the county. I would say not always through the county, but some areas like in Florida, they definitely do it. I can't think of anybody else who puts it on there. Like they'll have recent sales on the website or on the GIS, which is really cool. But of course, everyone thinks of Zillow first, kind of like when someone says, well, look it up, just Google it, right? Zillow is always number one for some reason, but Redfin is actually a little bit better. So if you guys are looking for what the actual value is, I've noticed that Redfin seems to be pulling information directly from the MLS. And I think it's a little bit better than Zillow. Plus Zillow, I think, is off anywhere between 8 and 10%, depending on where you're at in the country. But definitely use the comps on that particular site and get as many as you can. You can also use Redfin. You can do Realtor.com. Trulia is owned by Zillow, but Trulia has a really nice comp map. And then it also gives you the type of property and it gives you the distance, because you don't want to be too far away from your actual property. You want to be within half a mile to a mile. And then, within the last 6 months, if you can. If there's areas that don't have any of that information because everyone just pays their taxes and doesn't really sell their property in that area, so there's no comps to get, then I would contact a realtor. And I would contact a realtor that on Zillow that it shows properties near your property or your main property that you're researching, to ask them, because they work that particular area. So on the sold part, so on the, if you're looking at the website on the right-hand side, it's going to have all the solds once you change it, right? And then you can also change it at the top for the type for sale. So you can look at what is for sale and what has been sold. And either way, I would grab a couple different realtors in that particular area, because that's who you're going to want to work with, because they're already working there. It's not like you're just randomly calling a realtor asking if this is an area that they'd be interested in. So it just makes your life a little bit easier. As far as the counties go, like I said, some of them are on the GIS maps. For the most part, they aren't. So I would just use those third-party websites that are out there. And then there's a couple more. I think Bank of America still has one. And ePraisal, EPPRAISAL.com. That one actually does their website and Zillow at the same time. So you can do a 2-for-1 on that one. And then I think HomeSnap was just bought by Homes, so HOMES.com. Homes.com is another one that you guys can use. So like I said, I would just take as many numbers as you can get to evaluate what the value is, and then as many that you can get for comps. Let me close my door. Okay. All right, so conduct a CMA. So if you don't know what a CMA is, it's basically a comp report or a comparable market analysis. I say 4 is the minimum, but if you know you can only find 3, then you can just use 3. But you want to see which ones are for sale, what are they listed for, and then obviously what they sold for, and you're going to average it out to see, you know, what your property could be worth, and then what you could sell it for. The other thing I would say with when you're looking at properties like that is that, hold on, sorry, I'm choking it up over here. If you can't find any of the comps online, like I said, because no sales have happened in that area, just contact a realtor. Or if you have done your homework and you got your what you think the property is worth, you took out your wholesale factor, you took out your rehab, and you got to your max bid, and it's just very close to the comp rate, then you've done it right, right? The information on the website is correct. If it's so far off from what you think the comp is versus the actual value, then definitely contact a realtor. But make sure you guys are also comparing apples to apples. So if you have a 1-story property, you're not comparing it to a 2-story, right? We don't want to compare mobile homes with condos. Like, you want to make sure you guys are comparing like properties. And of course, a realtor can always help you with all this stuff. So here's the formula breakdown of what it is by square foot. So remember I was talking about with rehab, you can kind of do it like that too. So if you see a property was on there, like this first example, right? Our house is 1,800 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage on a 1/4 acre lot. And we find a comparable property that's sold, you're going to divide the sale price by the square footage, right? And that's how you're going to get dollars per square foot. So if that's the average for that particular area, then you can use that number by square foot and just multiply it by the square footage of the property. So if you're staying in like a particular county, you could use that, but pay attention to the different zip codes, right? Because different areas, like Duval County always pops up in my mind, because there's certain counties, certain parts of that county or certain zip codes where if you look at the assessed value and let's say it says 100, that it's going to be a ×2, that it's worth 200,000 market value, right? And then there's other areas where if it says it's worth 100, it's worth 100. Like, you'll get to know these different areas as you guys start researching and kind of get comfortable with certain areas that you like. But just the easiest factor to do square footage multiplier is just to take as long as it's comparable to your property, right? But you can even do the top and the bottom, right? Because on this one, we've got 1,700 square feet all the way up to 1,950. So you can do, you know, the 62 square feet, or you can do 60, right? Or 55 as your bottom and then 62 as your top. So it just depends on where you're at and what you're looking at. But I would definitely look around to see if those numbers are the same in different parts of the county so that you guys aren't assuming that something is worth less or more, right? Because I would rather think something is worth less and it's actually worth more versus the opposite, where I think it's worth a lot more and then I buy it and then I find out, oh, I did the comps incorrectly and now it's actually worth way less than I thought and I bid too much for it. Any questions on that so far? I feel like this is the most confusing part of everything, is these comps. No questions. Okay. All right. So we do also have a spreadsheet on the tax sale support website. And I think last time we went over it, it's under forms. And you can have your little Excel spreadsheet and you can put in all your information. So this is what the spreadsheet looks like. This is where you're going to put your comps here in the middle, what the house, what it's sold for, what the square footage is, and then it's going to automatically shoot out what it is priced per square foot, and then give you the fair market value. So it's going to let you know what we think that it's worth based on the information that you put in. And then you can have as many expenses on here as you want. You got the so Philip is asking, would you pass on a property because you couldn't find comps? No, I would just try to find a realtor to find out what's going on out there. Like if everyone's just keeping their property, or if just it's one of those areas that's really slow. You also want to make sure you're only looking at areas that have 100,000 people or more in the county, unless you are within 30 to 45 minutes. I mean, I would go all the way up to an hour away because people buy property where they can afford to live, but people are more than willing to communicate to commute. So definitely make sure you're not looking at a town of like 3,000 people and there's no comps, but the price is amazing and you want to buy it. And then you're going to end up sitting on it forever. So just make sure if you can't find comps yourself that you're contacting as many realtors as possible to find out why there are no comps there. And they should be able to explain that to you. So back to the expenses. So you can put on here legal fees. That could be to like clear the title. Agent fees, that's only if you're going to list it with a realtor. Locksmith, you're going to change the locks. Insurance, you're always going to want to get insurance. If you can remember the phrase insure and secure, that's going to be the first thing you're going to want to do after you get the property, or after you get the deed, excuse me, or even after you buy it, to be honest. I would get insurance right away. And then once you get the deed in hand, you are the new homeowner. I would secure the property, whether that's boarding it up, changing the locks, figuring out who's there, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you can put as many expenses in here as possible, but don't get crazy because this is also going to mess up your max bid if you do put just every little tiny fee in there, because we all know everything is going to have a fee, right? Recording is going to cost money, clearing the title is going to cost money, taking care of the property is going to cost money. If you're going to do a rehab, you've got your the electric bill, gas bill, water bill, all that kind of stuff. So you do want to factor that stuff in there, but don't nickel and dime it to death when you just talk yourself out of every single property you're looking at. What do you use to determine rehab costs since you can't look at the inside of the property? So you can go back to those pictures I showed before of what it would cost to fix all of those things that need to be fixed, but you also aren't going to know that until you get there. So you can just do a percentage if you want to, depending on how it looks. But for the most part, I would say, depending on how it looks on the outside, how old the property is, leans against the property, you should be able to get some type of number in your mind of what you're going to do. Because even though you might have full intention on flipping a property 100%, you might get in the property and all your numbers were off. And it could be in a bad way or it could be in a good way, right? Like I think I talked about it a couple weeks ago. Property I bought in Oklahoma, I thought it was just going to be the worst thing ever, and it only cost me $2,500 to get a dumpster, clean it out, and power wash it, and do the floors. Like it was gorgeous. There was nothing I had to do. Then the other property I got, somebody was squatting in there. They ripped out the bathroom. They were pooing all over the floor. It was just crazy. And I still sold that property. I mean, they both took me a long time, which is why I think I've told you guys before. It do not ever buy anything in Lawton, Oklahoma, which is Comanche County, because in all my years of buying tax lien deed and foreclosure properties, that was the longest it took me to get rid of these stupid properties. And I had a huge profit margin, but I had to wait a year on one of them and almost 2 years on the other one. So what do you do? Please, can you show how to get to this file again? So if you're on the tax sale support website, let me see here. I don't know if I can drag this over, change the screen. Can you guys see my Google that I just overlaid over here? Okay. So if you come over here to, let me move this up. Where was it? Oh, under membership right here, forms and links. If my computer wants to work. And then scroll down and it's right here, tax deed CMA calculator. Okay. All right, and then the third category is potential risks, right? Now this is the kind of stuff I like to buy. It's just my jam, I like it. So potential risks you gotta look out for are governmental liens, and then condemned and major rehabs or tear downs, condemned, okay, hold on, we'll go through each one here. So the government liens, I don't really think about mortgages, but they're talking about state mortgages. So if it was some type of, I don't know, some program that they're using to offer loans to people, that could be something that might have to be paid and isn't dismissed by the tax sale. Any federal, state, city, county, IRS, anything like that, all of that stuff sticks with the property unless the rules state it doesn't, like judicial sales in Pennsylvania, all of those properties come free and clear. So that's something that okay, if I participate in this type of sale, I don't have to worry about it because it's dismissed. So make sure you guys are reading the rules, that you know exactly what liens stay with the property and which ones don't. HOA, for the most part, stays on everywhere except for Florida. So be aware of that. And then obviously you just want to make sure you're looking at the title so that you know exactly what is against the property and what you'll be responsible for. Oops. Okay, and then condemned property, most of the time they will have a big sign like that, and it's always an obnoxious looking piece of paper. It's like hot pink or yellow or something. It's never going to be a white piece of paper. White pieces of paper are usually like notices that they're serving for whatever reason, or contact notices or foreclosures, like mortgage foreclosure notices, stuff like that. But if it's a bright colored piece of paper, it's more than likely going to be some type of condemned property. And somebody always gives me a hard time about this, but some properties that are condemned are for a meth lab, right? And I know that sounds terrible. However, the only part you have to clear and get like a certificate that it's clean and there's nothing there is the area where the meth lab was. So let's say it was like in the bathroom or it was in the back bedroom. That's the only room you would have to get cleared before you can sell the property. But not every time is that whole house a loss. It's just that particular area. So don't shy away from those. There used to actually be a website, and I think they changed it. And of course, I can't think of it off the top of my head right now. But there was literally meth lab listings because the average bear doesn't want to buy those properties. But I would say I wouldn't avoid those. But the reason it's condemned too will be listed with code enforcement. So if you guys are ever wondering, why is this particular property condemned? And then sometimes you don't have to ask. You can just see it, that it's falling apart, right? Like the porch is falling apart, or the roof is gone, or there was a fire, or there was a flood, something like that, right? You can physically tell and just see it just by looking at it online or looking at it in person. Because any structure that you buy, I don't care if it's a building or an apartment complex or a little shack, hunting shack on a big piece of property, you always want to get eyes on it somehow, whether you're taking a photo of it or you're paying somebody for it, but you never want to buy a structure without getting a picture of it first. And then, of course, insuring it after you do, so that way you don't lose your money. All right, so what kind of properties should we be targeting? Obviously, single families are the best. Condos, just make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. HOAs, you want to make sure you have what is the HOA doing, right? So for whatever fee that you have to pay, what does that give you? Are you getting access to the recreation center? Is there a gym? Is there a restaurant you have to go to? And I think I've told you guys this before, but I had a student in Miami and their HOA was $1,500 a month. And that didn't include the $900 a month that they had to pay to eat at the restaurants that were connected to their particular HOA. It actually wasn't even connected, it was across the street at their private beach that they had. And there was like 6 or 7 restaurants and they have to spend $900 a month or they have to pay it. So always find out what the HOA is. Another thing with HOA is you want to find out the rules, like the CCNRs. Are you allowed to rent it out? Are you allowed to have a VRBO or an Airbnb? Or do you have to wait a year to rent it? Like you want to know all these different rules unless you're going to flip it, right, and not keep it for a while. Mobile homes with land. I like mobile home parks. Those are always fun to buy. Duplexes and triplexes, of course. Anytime you can get multifamilies at these sales, it's always amazing. Buy and hold strategy. Apartment buildings, commercial buildings, like anything where, you know, some other business is using it, like law firms, doctor offices, even mechanic shops, stuff like that. They don't own the building, but they pay rent, right? So depending on how much you pay, that could be paid back quickly. And it's just income for you, right? And then you can even offer to sell it to the owner at a later date if you want to do that. Cabins, vacation property, always good stuff to look at, stuff that you can rent out. And then stuff you want to avoid, condemned or tear downs, like we talked about before, major rehabs, which, you know, again, you can just tell by looking at it. They've got huge government liens against the property, unless you know for a fact, A, they're not going to come with the property, and that's the only thing that's stopping you, or that particular entity will negotiate with you to have a lower amount. High crime areas, anything with environmental, you'll be able to see all that kind of stuff on the liens and encumbrances when you guys are doing your title reports. Distressed neighborhoods, so if you see an area where every other house is boarded up, or it's even like Memphis or Detroit, if you've seen those areas where you have like a house here and then 20 vacant lots and then a house, you know what I mean? Like those have just been demolished one by one by one. And then oversaturated market, to me, is just any huge city where everyone knows what it is. Like right here, Sacramento, I wouldn't say is oversaturated, but you know, like the Bay Area or different big cities. I mean, I'm sure you can find an area of that city, but just make sure you guys are checking out those particular areas and make sure there's not like houses being flipped every other day, because that's just not going to be any fun for you. So to kind of review everything, make sure you guys are taking pictures or getting eyes on the property before you buy it or before you bid on it. Pull up your comps, make sure you know what it's worth. Figure out a couple different exit strategies, right? Like, you know, best case scenario, you power wash it and clean it out and you flip it that way, right? Or you mow the lawn and make it look nice and then you sell it. Everyone shops with their eyes, right? So not everyone's going to see it from your viewpoint, but if you're looking at a property and it's trashed out, someone's going to give you more money if you remove all that trash and cut the grass and like wash the house off, right? So not every time do we have to come out of pocket $100,000 to flip a property, right? Sometimes you can even flip it to somebody who doesn't have the money or the credit, which, you know, there's so many people going into foreclosure now, especially from 2020 where they stopped it and now they've started it again, but they can't do too many of them, but they still are happening every day. Those people can't even qualify for a loan. So you can always do owner financing with these properties, or even buy a bunch of them, rent them out, sell them in bulk. You know, there's a plenty of different exit strategies that you can do. So don't go into a property with just one. Have a couple different options of what you want to do. And then, of course, if you can invest in properties that have a huge ROI for you, then definitely want to do those properties. So cool. So I finished really early today. So we all stay on for the next 15 minutes if you guys have any questions. Anything, it doesn't have to be about this subject, it should be anything tax lien deed related. Okay, Luis, we got a small piece of land at an auction. We got the deed 2 days ago and a nuisance letter from the city saying the grass is overgrown the same day. Should we pay the nuisance $185 or call the city and ask them to give us the opportunity to send someone? I would call and ask if you can send somebody before this lien gets attached to your property, because they will be on it. Once they find out that somebody bought a property, and I know this very well, especially in Indiana and Ohio. I don't know where you bought your property, but they are relentless, and they will go by there every single week and give you a lien against your property, or they'll have a daily accruing. Like, it's ridiculous. The last one I had in Indiana, they charged me $350 every time they would quote unquote mow the grass, even though I had the neighbor's phone number, and he'd send me pictures. And the grass wasn't even crazy for them to come out and do it. It's because that particular property was vacant for so long that's what they were used to. So I would call them, let them know that you're the new owner. You apologize for the grass being long. You were going to take care of it, and can we get away with dismissing this one time? And then I would schedule somebody to come on this, a schedule where they're going to come once a week or twice a week or twice a month, however fast it grows. And then I would also ask them, how long does the grass have to be before it's considered quote unquote overgrown? All right, Carl, is California and New Mexico are good for investment? Are you asking me or are you telling me? Oren, how do you check the environmental history of a property? I don't think there's such thing as an environmental history on a property, but you can definitely look on the liens and encumbrances against the property to see if there was anything there. And then you can call the assessor and ask them, because that would be something that they would know if there was a environmental problem with a certain area. But environmental issues are very few and far between, especially with these properties. I think the worst thing I've ever seen was some vacant land somebody bought in Colorado, and they couldn't build on it because they were trying to protect some type of shrew or something. And then once the population gets up to X amount, then they'll allow it to be built. So like little weird nuances like that are not very common. So, but if you can't find anything, like Googling it or just asking the assessor or looking at the liens and encumbrances, just call the county and ask them. They should know. Is there a video on tax law support that shows us how to sell the piece of land? I don't think so. There might be. If you look on the videos, the video section, there's a ton of videos of all kinds of stuff. And then on their YouTube channel, they have a bunch of videos on there too. And I'm sure they talk about, and I've talked about it too, like different ways to sell a property. Joseph, anything coming up on the calendar dealing with tax deeds or land you believe are good opportunities to check out? I would do Illinois. I would do Michigan. Those are both online, and Illinois has changed so much, and they're so cheap, and it's online now. You don't have to do the closed bid. I think Vermilion is the only, I was actually talking to those attorneys this morning. I think Vermilion is the only one that they're still doing an in-person sale, but for the most part, they have gone online. And Michigan just started, so Michigan's great too. And I think you can use a credit card with them. So Carl, do I think California and New Mexico are good? California, no. New Mexico, it just depends. So New Mexico, depending on the type of sale they're having, which I don't know if it's statewide or if it's just county by county, a lot of the times the mortgages stay with the property. So don't automatically assume that that's a bad thing, because it could be a $500,000 property that owes like, 50 grand and the mortgage is only 100, right? So it's still an opportunity, even if that mortgage stayed with the property, that you would still be able to make money. So don't automatically assume because the rules say that mortgage stays with the property, it may or may not either A, factor into your numbers because it's so small, or B, be a big deal because you might be able to find out what the payment is and then have someone rent it, or even rent it back to whoever lives there on, some type of land contract, they're going to sell it back to them. Okay, Roy, can you discuss how to set up business structure for rental properties? Did you put each rental? Okay, so I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff because I'm not an attorney and I'm not a CPA. But I want to say that if you ask Anne or Marie or your coach, they should have somebody on staff that you can talk to about that through tax law support. Joshua, I bought some empty lots in St. Clair County. I was told I need to get some title searches done within 30 days of the auction to get liens removed. If there are any, where can I get a title search done? You can contact any title company. They can do one. You could look up on PropStream. Sometimes you can look there. St. Clair is I think they're a pretty big county. You should just be able to look them up yourself through the record search. Otherwise, you're gonna have to pay a couple $100 if you're gonna do a title search. You can also go on Fiverr. Fiverr has virtual assistants that do title reports for like $5. I don't know what they have access to though. But I would try to look it up for free first. And then if that doesn't work, you can try the Fiverr thing, or you can try to contact a local title company to say, hey, I'm an investor. If I, did all my title searches through you or sold my properties through your title company, is there any way I can get a couple title searches? And sometimes they'll even do it for free. Van Jackson, what is the best site to sell an empty lot? I would say you can do Craigslist, you can do Facebook Marketplace, you can do FSBO, for sale by owner. You can have someone put a sign in the yard for you so that people who live there can call you. I would contact the neighbors if there's houses on each side. I mean, there's a million places that you can list it. How do we research how much mortgage is left to pay for the property on tax sale? If you're participating in a sale where the mortgage does stay, you can do backwards math. So it is public record, just like any other lien. So you can look up when the deed was issued, and usually there's a deed of trust right after on the same day that's recorded. It'll give you the interest rate and it'll give you the amount of the mortgage that was borrowed. And then you can also go on, I think it's mortgage calculator or something, or mortgage something website where you put in what the original amount was, what the date was, what the interest rate was, and they should be able to let you know how much is left in the mortgage, or you can just estimate depending on how much it is. I would say if it's over 15, like if it's a 30-year loan, I would just assume it's half if it's over 15 years. Because usually that's about how long it takes for those. Because in the beginning, nothing is going to the principal, right? Everything is going to interest. So another thing you can do is property radar, but it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's expensive. I love it. It's $119 a month or something. You can see foreclosures, and you can see when a property was bought, how much the mortgage was. So that's a website. You got to pay for that website though. And then PropStream is the other one that will show liens and encumbrances, and it'll show the mortgage. And that one's like $99 a month. So Oren, let me show you. Have any of you guys ever seen PropStream? No? Okay. Let me show you. So this is what PropStream looks like. So basically you'll just put an address in here. So let's just look up something I was looking at before. So it'll tell you all the sales. So it helps with like comps, market analysis, stuff like that. And then if you go to the details, it'll tell you if they have a mortgage or not, and then the estimated balance there, and then how much equity is in it based off of what they think the value is. And then you can come down here and get some more information on the property. So it's a really cool website, pretty up to date. I haven't used any of this stuff. I usually just look at the mortgage and transaction history just to kind of see what's been going on with it. And then the property details. I want to know how much the mortgage is left, what they think it's worth, and then, comps at a glance, that kind of stuff. So the website's really, really cool. Can you please send Fiverr title search party? Search link. Oh, it's just Fiverr. FIVERR.com. You're welcome. How do we research how much mortgages? Oh, wait, where I did that. Okay, cool. Perfect. You guys have any more questions? Can you please type the websites to use for the mortgage data? So that is this one. So PropStream. And then this is the other one. This is Property Radar. So this one's really cool. Let's see. I'll just choose this one here. So this one, it gives you everything, right? So if I'm looking at something to see what the transactions were, which like earlier today, or actually, you know what? Let me show you when I was looking at it. 2517 Ethan Way. So this house sold at the tax sale here in Sacramento back in February. So I was kind of checking it out. So it'll show you right here at the very top. It should be when they bought it, right? There's the deed. It tells you that they put 56,000 down, so it's 100%. And then they got a first in 90. So this is 85, right? And then 91, they got a first for 16, a second for 10, and then they must have refinanced right here because they got $571,000 out of it, right? Then you got another one here for 51. And then they short saled it to somebody else because obviously that was 2005, right? But I don't know why you'd take out 571,000 when you didn't owe any money. And then you can see the next person who owned it, and then you can see that that person, here's a notice of default, right? So they got a loan for 195,000 from Washington Mutual, and then that loan was sold to America's Broker, right, for 240. And then now here is the notice of default for 7,700, and then notice of sale, notice of trustee sale, that they're going to open the bid at 250,000 because that's what was owed, and nobody wanted to pay that. So whoever this HSBC whatever, they ended up buying it for 85,000. So I like this website because it gives a lot of information. Sometimes it'll give you the contact information of the owner. Sometimes they'll have phone numbers, LinkedIn, Facebook. If you're looking at the actual information of the property, you can see that they've had, you know, some interesting notes in here. When it was listed for sale, you can see some comps in here as well. So it's just another cool website. But like I said, this one's a little bit more expensive. But if you want to pay closer to 200, you have more information for the rest of the country. But you can see quite a bit of information from this website. All right, guys. Well, that's it for me today. So I will, hold on, I'm going to answer Luis's question really quick. We participated in 6 auctions, and I think out of frustration, desperation, we got a piece of land at the last auction. Overbid. We seem to always get overbid. We spend tons of time researching, taking pictures, getting lists of properties. Do you feel the auctions are just getting too competitive, or are there still deals at the auction? Where are other students finding deals before auction? High bid, cold calling, offer letters. Where are you seeing more success? Because I'm just kind of frustrated. It's normal, just participate in X amount of auctions. So I don't think it's getting more competitive. I think it's always been competitive, but I don't ever participate, and I don't ever tell my students to participate anywhere that everyone else is going. So if we're talking about Texas, just because that's the first thing that pops in my mind, because everyone wants to get the 25% penalty, which is great. But any state that you can think of that everybody else wants to talk about is where I would not go. So if we're talking about Texas, for instance, I'm not going to go to San Antonio. I'm not going to go to El Paso. I'm not going to go to Dallas. I'm not going to go to Houston, because those are where everyone else is going to go. I'm going to look at the counties around it. I also don't like participating in live lien sales. I like to look at the sale after the fact because it's everything that wasn't bought, and I'm going to get the full interest rate if it is a bid down interest. And I look at OTC property just because it's right there and ready for me to take it. Like, it doesn't matter. So I would be looking at more OTC stuff if you feel like you're getting outbid. But it's also a comparison thing, right? So there's a lot of people that go to a sale and wonder, well, why did they pay, 100% of what the property's worth? Who cares? It doesn't matter. What matters is your price point was X, right? And theirs was higher. So what they're going to do with the property is irrelevant. Why a property doesn't sell at a sale to me is irrelevant. If you do the work on it, your due diligence on the property, and the numbers make sense to you and it's a good buy, then that's something that you want to buy. Can you send letters? 100%, because you're also getting all these lists for free, right? All these lists that are posted out on Real Auction, on Grant Street, on Bid for Assets, I mean, you name it, all these different websites that have all these lists are letting you know for free all of these properties are going to tax sale. Now, is every one of those properties got someone going to be open to selling their property before the sale? No. But are there going to be people that will? 100%. Sometimes that person is deceased and you have to get a hold of the family member, and the family member doesn't even know that that house is for sale. So depending on the numbers, depending on what liens are against the property, that's another thing you have to think about, right? Because if there's a bunch of IRS liens or a mortgage that's crazy high and compared to the value of the property, you're not going to want to buy that, because the whole point of the tax deed sale is to wipe that stuff out, right? You're not going to have to worry about it. However, if you buy a house traditionally, meaning you're going through a title company, doing all that kind of stuff, all those things need to be paid. So if you don't have the money to do that, you could still contact these people and try to help them. Or even if they don't want to sell it to you and that property does sell, you can contact them again and say, hey, there's an overage, if there is an overage, right? And you can charge them a fee to go get that money, because 95% of the people that are out there that are owed surplus funds don't know how to get it or know that they had it. So to say, can you cold call people? I wouldn't. I would text, because so many people just don't want people calling them. You can send offer letters for sure. You can even send letters to neighbors or other places asking if they would be interested in buying land in their area, right? Just to kind of put it out there to see if there are buyers there. Another thing with PropStream that I forgot to bring up is they have a cash buyers list. So you can pull up any area and see how many properties they've bought, how much money they've spent, and you can use those people as your buyers. So if you buy something in that area, you can contact them, just find out what their buy box is, right? What do they want? What are they looking for? Stuff like that. So hopefully that was helpful. I will see you guys next week, same time. Have a good day.